Now this chain of events has been depicted many times over, but having witnessed it myself, I shall quote what occurred as best I remember. Before the creation of the universe there was nothing but a formless void. God and I stood amid the darkness, the triune, three angelic vessels of creation, each of us designed to house the Holy Spirit and to be his hand of creation, joined together and fused into one being. As we broke through the barriers of the universe, beyond the first moment of creation, and stood amidst the void, we looked around at the nothingness and raised out hand. Each of us possessing the divine spark of God's power, we spoke, "Let there be light," and snapped our fingers. Our divine power collided with each other and all that is came into being. When that was done, the Holy Spirit told us that we must wait for a time for the universe to settle into place, and so we were led to slumber within the core of giant stars. Billions of years passed, and then we woke from our slumber, rising like a phoenix from its ashes. The Holy Spirit led us to witness the formation of the sun. A mixture of gases amid a cluster of asteroids started to pool together, and two bright flashes of jets shot out in opposite directions and then came crashing back down on each other with a bright flash of light and a rolling cloud of debris that encircled it. There at the center of the blast zone was a ball of fire that was our sun. Giant hunks of debris that had been a result of the fusing gases of the star's formation, like residue of water built up overnight that becomes the morning dew at dawn. The debris would become fused together by the large solar flares that were emitted by the newly created sun. The fire of the flares were captured by the fusing asteroids, and that energy became the core of the planets. These activities were natural events set in place by the creation's formation and basic cause and effect, but the Earth was not created out of divine intervention. It possessed all the qualities that one of the Godheads of the Triune had dictated to us that were necessary for carbon-based life to be possible here. I guess you could say that our entitlements would have been best described as the Triune of power, the Triune of wisdom, and the Triune of life. The Triune of wisdom told us what was to be done. I forged what was to be and brought it into being, and the Triune of life would bring what was forged into the world through the tree of life, which was like an anchor in the world from which he would work. Then came the fateful day when Adam and Eve ate from the trees of life. We all knew what was going to happen, we just didn't know until later the reason why he allowed it to happen. It was all a part of a process, a grand design, that would ultimately mold the very principalities of mankind's free will, define the boundaries between good and evil, right and wrong, and the ones acting out of greed and selfishness, the biblical one known as Satan, who thought he had fooled all of creation, yet in the end finds out the entire time every step he made was met by another step designed by God, and he was made an example of the price paid for such behavior. In the end, the great deceiver of nations was manipulated and used in the plan of God's grand design, and was defeated before he was even able to begin his plans of treachery, and supplanted by the roots of the tree of knowledge between good and evil, from which he was bound to help nurture its fruits for the betterment of mankind by being the father of sin and incarnate of evil. Hello people of the world. This message is for you, China, namely your President Xi Jinping. It was a dirty pool old man to unleash the storm that swept through the southern United States on Easter Sunday, so I'm here to return the favor. 1 or 2 tornadoes would have been nothing out of the ordinary. 5 or 6 tornadoes would have been borderlining an act of God. But 18 tornadoes at once seems highly unlikely and only possible through some technological terror. So I inquired from my sources that holds you responsible for this. So now then it is my turn. You have greatly insulted the green dragon and now shall feel the terror of Feng Fang Foom. In Greek times they would say unleash the kraken. But in modern times I call him the beast. Made from the compiled pollutants of your oceans, I made him in 2004. The tsunami that struck Indonesia was caused by this beast. His ability to change size and hind fins struck the tectonic fault line, and his side fins swept the tidal force together, diminishing his size as he approached the shoreline, allowing the tsunami to hit at its full force. It also was the source of seaquake that hit Japan with the tsunami in 2011. Derived from the game character in Final Fantasy, Sin, correctly named so considering his origins, and I now release him onto you. Rook takes knight. Your move is next, Xi Jinping. Well, that interruption was unnecessary anyway. When Adam met from the fruit of the tree of life, it corrupted him on a genetic level, considering that tree was saturated with the power of God. Adam's frail human form was unable to contain such power, and it ultimately destroyed both him and Eve. An example of this can be found within the eyes of anyone who has killed someone. You will notice that in the eyes of an innocent there is a spark within their eyes as they speak and laugh, but if you look into the eyes of someone who has taken a life, you'll notice that spark is not found. It is because their soul has been tainted by the act of taking another's life, shortening their lifespan and killing them in the end. The same happens to Adam and Eve, but much worse. But that, my friends, is for another story.
Legiones apostoli